The revolution will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised. The revolution will be no rerun, brothers. The revolution will be live.
Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1653 of Toronto Mic'd. Proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. Building Toronto Skyline, a podcast and book from Nick Iones, sponsored by Fusion Corp Construction Management, Inc. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Joining me today, making her Toronto Mic'd debut, is the creator of RapCity on MuchMusic. It's Michele Geister. Welcome, Michele.
Hey, Mike. Thank you so much for having me. Greetings and salutations. And so cool to finally make this link with you.
Yeah, I'm really jazzed about this convo. I had now we're going back a few years, but I had Michael Williams here in the basement. We were chatting and we were talking about you. And I think I reached out. I'm pretty sure I found you and I invited you on and you were in Jamaica. Where do I find you today?
Well, I literally just arrived from Jamaica, but Jamaica is my home base. But I'm in the Toronto area currently because we're remembering RapCity, the legacy of Canadian hip hop, this Saturday at the AGO.
So that's Saturday, March 22nd, if you're listening in the future, 2025, 1 to 4 p.m., RapCity, the legacy of Canadian hip-hop television. And here you are in my city, your former city, and we're still, doing this remotely. I couldn't get you in the basement. You got a busy schedule.
Yeah, I apologize because I know the vibes would have been sweet to be there with you. I have to say I became aware of Toronto Mike because you did a podcast with one of my mentors by the name of Carlton Riddenhauer, aka Chuck D.
Wow.
And one of my colleagues from the Chum City MuchMusic and even freelance music video days, Joel Goldberg, he said, "Oh, your name got mentioned. I need you to hear this." So, that was how I became aware of your podcast all the way back in Jamaica. And it's great, 6 degrees of separation, really, right?
Well, shout out to Jay Gold, who created Electric Circus at MuchMusic, and a dear friend of the program. He also, and this will come up later because we're going to talk about RapCity. I got a bunch of questions, as you can imagine, but he also directed those early Maestro Fresh West videos.
Yeah, and the Dream Warriors. I worked on Dream Warriors with him. Mishimi, I worked on Mishimi with him. We had a few crossovers there.
Well, I'm gonna love this conversation. But back to Chuck D just for a moment. That even to this day, if you go to torontomic.com and you click guests at the top and you get the list of guests, you'll be added there later today. I got the picture I have there to show guests of Toronto Mike is Chuck D and I, because this will come up again later, but I love Public Enemy, one of my favorite bands of any genre of all time, and to speak with Chuck D in person was just a mind blow, dream come true.
Well, I can very much relate. I mean, I was very privileged to get to interview him multiple times. And even more recently, during the 50th anniversary of hip hop, an article was written about me. And I reached out and got to be in touch with Chuck, and he gave us a quote for a Music Works article. And yeah, what a privilege to get to speak with him and really, really gain some knowledge from him over the years. So very grateful for that. And, I'm also grateful that he always continues to, give me respect for the work that I did in promoting hip hop.
That's what I loved about they only gave me 20 minutes with Chuck D. But you'll take 20 minutes of Chuck D over no time with Chuck D, right? So,
Yeah.
but the names he dropped, I'm thinking Errol Nazareth, yourself, and just talking about DJ Ron Nelson, and just talking about these early days of hip hop. Like, I just thought it was awesome. He knew the names. He knew the scene. He dropped some small town Ontario names. I can't remember. Did he Kitchener, Waterloo? I can't remember. He dropped a whole bunch of interesting,
Yeah,
names.
I actually have footage of and a lot of these things are on YouTube. I actually grabbed a camera and went on the road with them to my hometown, which is Kitchener Waterloo, and went to their first show there. And it was incredible. The wonderful and longtime promoter Gary Stewart, who worked with the University of Waterloo and then went on to do his own projects, had his own club, all ages club. He actually was a big hip hop fan, and he brought the early tours, including Public Enemy, Ice-T, and the Rhyme Syndicate. So of course I had to go to my hometown and check that out.
So, Michelle, how does a young woman from Kitchener Waterloo end up at Much Music? Could you help me with that path, getting you in the doors at 299 Queen Street West?
Sure. You may have to edit me at some point because it's a bit of a long story. But I started doing television when I was in high school, about 16 years old. And we had a teacher, Lynn Myers was his name. He was involved with community television in Kitchener, and he got a group of us students together. I was like a jock and a drama nerd, so I was a combination of things, right? But I was very interested in this television thing. We got trained. We ended up doing a television show, and it was myself and some female friends, and then some of our classmates who were male. And it was funny because the guys wanted to do like a Monty Python series, and we wanted to do 60 minutes hardcore journalism. Anyway, we got trained, and I was the only one who stuck with it, volunteering, learning all the aspects of television, and eventually ended up working for the station. Music television was kind of just starting to come out with the new music, which was a very influential program in my life. And I was like, I want to do this. I want to do this. So by the time I was in college, I did different summer jobs with community television, honing my directing and editing and producing skills. But by the time I was in college, and I stayed in Kitchener to go to college, I was producing my own music television program called Videosyncrasies. And I would be going out, and here's another 6 degrees of separation.
Yeah.
While I was at college, my first music interview and I saw the clip the other day because somebody digitized my old Betacam reels from college days. My first interview was the Spoons. And I saw that you had Rob on the other day.
He was here. Was it? Oh my God, was it yesterday? Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
He was
yeah.
here yesterday.
Yeah, so when I saw that, I thought, oh my goodness, because these tapes have just come back into the light. And me there. And what had happened, it was someone else's student assignment. But because I worked at community television and I had access to the equipment, I was very popular. My college didn't have a lot of equipment. There was one camera, one editing suite for 75 students. But I worked somewhere where I had all the toys and pretty nice quality toys. So anyway, I ended up doing this interview with the Spoons and went back, stayed up all night because, of course, the deadline was the next day, and did my first kind of music television piece. So I continued further on in college to have my own show, Videosyncrasies. That Spoons interview kind of lit my fire.
Wow.
And I wrote my thesis about music television for college. I had along the way, I've had challenges. My course director at one point pulled me into his office because they were very old school broadcasting. I went to Conestoga College, and he said to me, you know, we're very concerned about you. We don't understand this music television thing, and we're worried you're on drugs.
Oh,
So it was a great affront to my sensibility because I was a very good student and I was killing it with my film production classes and I was doing all this hands-on stuff. Anyway, in protest, I didn't go to his class. He was a radio teacher, a radio announcer. So I ended up doing my 3-year college program in 4 years because they insisted that I do that class. If only
wow.
I had known, maybe I could have taken it somewhere. Anyway, eventually I graduated. I moved with a bunch of friends to Toronto, and I was determined I was going to work at Much Music by any means necessary, right?
Right.
We landed, about 8 of us, 9 of us, in a 3-story Victorian house about 3 blocks from the epicenter of Canadian hip hop's birth at CKLN, the Fantastic Voyage. And a couple of blocks south was Much Music City TV at 99 Queen Street East. So I started there. And I did other jobs in the meantime while I kept trying to get my foot in the door at Much Music. And eventually, one of my hometown neighbors and also course mates for college, she got into Much first. And she called me one day, and I'd been doing other freelance projects, film projects as a PA mostly. And she called me. She said, "Oh, we're looking for a technician. I know this is what you want to do." And I went and interviewed with the late great Dana Lee, who was the technical supervisor, went on to head Ryerson, aka TMU's RTA program at one point, and he hired me. And he said to me, "You are the first technical person I ever hired for Master Control who had a demo tape." Because I had been shooting bands and compiling stuff for a pretty long time at that point. So I started in Master Control at Much Music on at 99 Queen Street East.
What year is this, Michelle?
I started in 1985, dating myself, I know.
No, you're not. Just that we know because we just had an anniversary and I did a full episode with Ed Conroy from Retro Ontario where we went deep into the origin story of Much Music, but we know Much Music launches in 84. So you're
Yes.
absolutely 99 Queen Street East. You're
Yeah.
you're an early you're a pioneer over there at Much Music. So I got to ask you, so because I mentioned off the top that you came up in the Michael Williams conversation, and Michael Williams was at Soul in the City. So you're now in the doors at 99 Queen Street East. How do you become involved with Soul in the City?
So what happened, here I am, I have this technical position, and I'm very, I trained to know all the technical stuff, as I mentioned, in community television. I had done Master Control as a part-time job for years. So, I had the skills, but I also had been doing production for years, and I started volunteering my services. So Joni Daniels, who was a director at Much Music, was producing 2 very cool early features called Fashion Notes and Indie Street for Erica M. And I asked Joni if she needed any help. And she turned over the editing and the post-production of those features to me. So I'm doing my long, 12-hour job shift, and then in my spare time, I'm posting these weekly shows for her. Much Music Master Control in that very small studio was kind of a sliding glass door away from the production studio. And at that point, Music Plus, the French service, started broadcasting out of that studio. And it was an 8 p.m. to midnight shift. And then maybe you did some pre-production in the studio. I was rescued finally from Master Control by this incredible director, Rob Della Durante, who had them move me to be on his crew. So I became a live videotape operator for the Music Plus crew. In the meantime, I had met Michael Williams because he was VJing. He was doing the Much show. You're kind of just off to the side of the Much studios. And, we got talking. As Michael has said, we found out we both had crazy eclectic taste in music. I had already been DJing and before that spent a lot of time, going out. And I was always that annoying person who carried their own vinyl to the club and begged the DJ to play it. So Michael had put together, he was trying to work with an official Much producer on his radio show concept that he wanted to turn into Soul in the City. And the producer had put together a playlist, program list of music, and Michael wasn't happy with it. And he showed me, and it pretty much was a pop music list. And it had a common denominator that there were Black artists in it, but it wasn't really soul. It was pop. And as somebody very invested in music, all the genres, I was attuned to what he wanted. So I said, well, let me do it. So I commandeered my wonderful director, Robert Della Durante, who was pushing the rudimentary equipment we had at the time to do all kinds of amazing graphics. And I actually co-created Soul in the City with Michael. I did all the production work and producing and editing and directing and writing behind Soul in the City.
Michele, do you think you're getting, your due flowers on Soul in the City front? Because whenever I read about it, I read, of course, you're editing, you're producing, you're directing, but you don't get that co-creator credit for Soul in the City.
Interesting, isn't it? It's interesting because, I left Canada. I moved away almost 30 years ago. It'll be 30 years next year. And it's almost like there's erasure of things. And I to the point that I've seen resumes posted online where people have claimed my credits, but I wasn't here. I wasn't in this space. And I guess, time passes on, people forget, and the star system that existed at MuchMusic, those of us who were behind the camera, we often didn't get, the exposure. But those who were there would know, and certainly Michael knows. Namagetti wrote a beautiful article in 2017, and that was the beginning of my story kind of coming to light because she wrote and shared what had happened. But all credit to Michael that Soul in the City began as his radio show in Montreal. But it took my production skills and know-how, and as well as my musical taste to add to the mix to actually create the program.
And let the record show forevermore, you are a co-creator of Soul in the City.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I mean,
that.
it's never too late to set the record straight on these things, because we're going to get to a show where you are credited as creator, and it is just interesting to note that you don't receive that similar credit for Soul in the City, although you are often credited as a director, producer, editor.
I know, and there's even I now that I've been back to Canada a lot more and interacting, I am trying to set the record straight in other ways. I know there's an academic who wrote something, and I was a little annoyed because it said I was a helper. I helped, and it's and I have to say this part too that I left out. When I started Soul in the City, it was as a volunteer. So I still was working 40 hours a week for Music Plus, but then I was doing a full-on national television show at a very high, and Soul in the City was the first specialty show produced at MuchMusic, because we kind of found out, oh, well, when Music Plus goes off the air, so MuchMusic went off the air at 8. We switched over to Music Plus, And then Music Plus finished at midnight. And we realized, oh, here's a little bit of production time to play on the toys and make some cool TV. And then everybody followed. But we were the first ones to actually do that. And I have to tell you, because I had a 40-hour-a-week job I was getting a paycheck for, and doing this television show within 5 months of working for MuchMusic, I have to add, I knew every place to crash and have a nap in that studio. So when we moved to 299, for a long time, I'd catch a few Z's on Ziggy's couch, if you remember the couch for Ziggy's show.
Of course, do I remember the couch for Ziggy's show?
Remember the couch?
Of course. Love Ziggy Lawrence too.
Yes, I know, and I saw that she's on the list of guests that you've had on the program.
It's funny because she's been over a couple of times, but both times her personal driver was the aforementioned Joel Goldberg.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. I get that. I mean, I think there's some very long-term relationships that were formed with the whole Chum City family, I would say.
Well, Joel still works with Moses.
Yeah. Yes, he does. He does, in fact.
Shout out to the Zoomerplex. Okay, so much ground here. Okay, because can you share with me, do you have a relationship to this day with Michael Williams?
We have been in touch, not so much recently. I always try to make sure that he gets his respect. I recently made sure that he was to be included in the Project T-Dot exhibition. And I know that Jani Charles recently did his photo shoot. I saw it on his socials. So I had recommended that. So yeah, always looking out for Michael.
Good. He's actually always been tight with the Spoons. Speaking of the Spoons. So I know.
Yes, I noticed. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, you go ahead, because I was just going to point out that like I've seen the Spoons in the last 20 years, and Michael Williams was like a part of it, like almost like the introduction would be by Michael Williams. He might do some DJing before the gig. Like he's tight with the Spoons people.
Very cool.
There you go.
Very cool. I wasn't fully aware of that, but that makes sense. Michael's always been this incredible musicologist, and his love of music has no barriers. So he loves everything. So yeah.
No,
and what a great person to have in your corner if you are an artist.
Yeah, well-spoken guy, interesting guy, and sounds like you collaborated on Soul in the City. But now I must segue us over to another show that was very important to yours truly, recording it to VHS. And I'm hoping you'll give me in great detail the origin story of RapCity.
Can you see it?
Let me flip screens over. Okay. So while I look at that, I'm gonna play a song. So I'm gonna be looking at that, and I'm gonna play this song.
Funky.
Michelle, I love that so much. I can see the opening theme right now in my head as I look at that graphic there.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Shout out to Retro Kids who did T-shirts a couple years ago. And of course, being, the wannabe fashionista that I am, I took this T-shirt, had it cut out, added to a sweatshirt, and then had my friend added more graphics to it.
RootsRhymesCollective.com. RapCity forever. Absolutely,
Yeah.
RapCity. So, okay, you're going to give me the origin story, but I'm going to ask you right off the top. Was BET already, did they already have the show called RapCity when you launched RapCity?
No, it was kind of in tandem, unknowingly. Right?
Like parallel thoughts.
I want to say,
Yeah.
Mike, I don't want to give away everything because I want people to come out to the event, to the AGO. So I might have to say safe word. that I can't go, but I'm going to share what is already public knowledge. Um, I we started with Soul in the City, giving coverage to many genres of Black music, and it just so happened that rap music was exploding in that time frame, and it really started to eat up our time because if you think about it, we only had 1 hour a week that was specialized curated programming for Black music. So there was a lot of petitioning and pleading to the powers, John Martin specifically, that we needed a rap music show. So in 1987, I was very privileged. It was my first New York shoot, and I went solo with a cameraman at the time. Oh shoot, now I'm going to forget his Gord McWaters. He went on to do a lot of the beautiful promotional work for City and MuchMusic, but he was a studio cameraman at the time. And Gord was assigned to be my cameraman. And I went to cover a Jive Records release party for DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince.
Of course.
So we went to New York and spent the whole day. I can remember, like, I can't sleep when I'm going to travel. We had to be at the airport at 4 o'clock in the morning. We had to clear our equipment. And then we did the rounds all over New York to independent labels to do interviews all day, no lunch, no dinner, then straight, like I'm sure Gord wanted to kill me, straight to the party that had everybody at this party, in addition to Jazzy Jeff and Will Smith. And then left that party, went to interview Curtis Blow
Woo!
at the hotel, Gramercy Park. And then finally, after that, we got food. Like I starved the poor cameraman for the whole day. And then this was one of my greatest regrets.
Mm-hmm.
Curtis asked us if we wanted to go clubbing. And I was just falling down. Like I was exhausted. Like if people know to concentrate and do production and be super focused on interviews and all of that for probably, I don't know how long we had been at it, 16 hours for the day. Like, and having not slept, I couldn't go. I was falling asleep, and that huge, huge regret that I didn't do that.
Yeah, you only live once, Michele.
Pardon me?
You only live once.
I know that. And I have been, a queen of getting out and clubbing and staying up all night. Some of my fondest Toronto memories are leaving places like the Twilight Zone when the sun is rising, right? So right. I'm no stranger, but it just, yeah, I guess we didn't have Red Bull in those days.
You were out of gas. Like if your tank's empty, what are you gonna do, right? You gotta refill.
Yeah. Yeah, but that was an incredible day. So we gathered all this content. So we had interviewed Tommy Boy Records, Tom Silverman. We had interviewed Bill Adler of Def Jam Records. We had been to Sleeping Bag, which was an incredible underground label. And we had done all this work, got back and did little features with that on Soul in the City. Now, 1987 was also an incredible year in Toronto for live music shows, thanks to Ron Nelson, the godfather of Canadian hip hop. So, as everyone knows, he evolved from doing his radio show to becoming a promoter. So, we began giving coverage to Ron's events. And the first event that I went to shoot with Ron was a battle that had Boogie Down Productions, Biz Markie, and when I say Boogie Down Productions, including Scott LaRock.
Of course.
This was before Scott LaRock passed. And what I did is I somehow got the new music to come and cover it. But I was the field producer, so I was the one running around taking care of all the details. And you can see that video still lives in certain places on YouTube. And it was it was fantastic that Ron brought these shows. In that year, besides the BDP, there was Big Daddy Kane. There was Eric B. and Rakim. There was Public Enemy. There was Salt and Pepper. Like, I asked him more recently, I said, how did you do this? He goes, I just did it. I just did it. So we were gathering this content still and doing stories on soul. And in early 1988, I did a Soul in the City rap music 1 hour special. And that it showed, it proved, it was really a proof of concept about the music and the love that was out there for the music, and the fact that the music, yes, this is a Black art form, but it isn't just a Black audience that's listening to the music. And not long after that, I got the go-ahead to John Martin called me into his office and said, yes, you can start working on a hip hop show, on a rap show, because we didn't say hip hop so regularly. You can start working on a rap show. Come back to me with a list of names. So one night after my DJ gig at the Tasmanian Ballroom, I played downstairs and in the what'd you call it? The cave dance floor downstairs. Shout out to David Prentice for believing in my musical taste. I got together with some hip hop head friends and we brainstormed names. I took the list to John and he liked RapCity, but he said, oh, we're going to spell it as one word, the way the new music was spelt as one word, the way that MuchMusic was spelt as one word. So a little while later, one of those same friends who had helped with the names called me or we got together and they're like, I just heard that this place BET is doing a show called RapCity. And I was a little flustered and I went back to John. He goes, it doesn't matter. He goes, ours is spelled different anyway. And we continued. And it's probably a good idea because I think Michael Hayden might have been a bit advanced at that point with starting the work on the montage that he commissioned Runt to make the artwork for, that old school cell animation montage.
And, it's a different country, and we know that more than ever these days. But I know that when The Edge launched, when CFNY became The Edge in Toronto 102.1, they basically just took all the name and everything from an American radio station because that name rights didn't cross the border. Like, I feel like you guys were okay. And I like the stylized RapCity with a capital C, one word, because it is in the same guise as MuchMusic, which is one word with a capital M. And you mentioned new music. Shout out to JD Roberts and Jeannie Becker.
Oh, gosh. Yes. My hero.
Okay, so, gosh, Michelle, so many, as I listen to you talk about the RapCity origin story, I need to ask you about FOTM means friend of Toronto Mike. You are now finally an FOTM. So welcome to the family.
Thank you.
Fellow FOTM who I just adore, been over here several times, and I need to ask you about right now because you kind of alluded to her, and then I feel like we didn't quite get, to the story. But one of these RapCity Hour specials that was part of the Soul in the City series that you're talking about, these rap battles with Boogie Down Productions and Scott LaRock and everybody. This is where Michie Me is discovered by DJ Scott LaRock, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I need that story because we often do a little trivia on this show where we go, who's because the story of Maestro Fresh West getting that deal because he's on Electric Circus, and then Stevie B sees him perform, and Michael Williams is involved, but it depends who you ask exactly who, how he gets in touch. But he gets a U.S. record deal. But before Maestro Fresh West had a U.S. record deal, Michie Me had a deal. She's the first Canadian hip-hop artist to secure a U.S. record deal, right?
She is, and I want to tell you my role in
that. That's what I'm teasing here. Let's get the Michele Geister role in this.
So I I really recognized the art and just the energy and the culture and the purpose behind our early artists. And, Ivan Berry was very instrumental with Beat Factory. He was professional. He was pushing his artists, and we got to know each other. I was at that battle where Mishi performed, and I'd have to look back to remember the female, but she killed it. She killed it when she broke into her patois and stuff. And I even have to go deeper than that because I was speaking with Mishi a while back, and she's working on a memoir, and she said, Michelle, a lot of people always say, well, you were there, you were alone, you were just this lone, female out there, and she goes, but Michelle, I wasn't alone. You were there, and I was there. I got to go. Well, and back to the record deal story first.
Sure.
Ivan had said that they were first priority was interested in signing them. Mishimi, I'm sorry, MC Light's label as well as Audio 2's label. They were very interested in Mishi. They were coming to do a session at Wellesley Sound, I believe. And Ivan asked me if I could do some coverage of that. And I did come out and I ended up packaging a feature that I spent a little bit more time than I usually have on. And First Priority used that feature to go to Atlantic Records when they were looking to make sure that Mishi would also get distribution, not just be signed to the independent, but be able to have distribution. So I put a really beautiful package together highlighting Mishi. And that exists as well. I've seen that kicking around on YouTube as well. But then I ended up going my first trip ever to Jamaica, where I now reside and where I raised my children, was to Kingston with Mishi to record her debut album. So yeah,
Okay,
I was
this
there along the way.
so you played that's a key role, I would argue, in securing Mishi B her first record deal.
I believe so as well.
Yeah. Okay, we agree
So
on
as
this.
well.
Okay, and this is a bit of a fun fact. The last time I saw Mishi Me, it was not in the basement here. It was at the Art Gallery of Ontario. So she performed
Yes.
at the Art Gallery, and that's another excuse for me to let the listenership know, not that we're wrapping up quite yet, Michelle. I got some more questions,
Yeah.
but remembering Rap City, the legacy of Canadian hip hop television, is this Saturday, March 22nd from 1 to 4 p.m. at the Art Gallery of Ontario. So this is Roots Rhymes Collective and Art Gallery of Ontario celebrating the legacy of MuchMusic's groundbreaking and innovative hip-hop television program, Rap City. So are you going to be there for a conversation? Who's joining you?
Yes, so this is very exciting.
Yeah.
So, as you know, Rhapsody endured for several decades. I mean, they brought it back. You couldn't stop the power of hip hop. So, very exciting. Master T will be joining.
Wow.
Namagetti, Namagetti is
Yeah.
joining.
Love Nam.
Oliver Walters will be joining. Uh, Tyrone Edwards will be joining as well, which is AKA T-Rex, and Basil C. Young, who was one of my really main foundational cameramen who I had a million adventures with back in those golden days of Canadian hip hop.
He's an unsung hero because he's not
He
he's not in
is,
front of the camera, but I talk to
which is
go ahead, sorry, talk about Basil for me, because people who don't know, Master T's brother is Basil Young, because Master T is Tony Young, and I'd love to hear a bit more about Basil. He doesn't get his due credit.
Basil is incredible cameraman, the director of photography. He is a longtime employee of Chum, and now that their assets are owned by Bell. He still is with Bell, and he really helped shape the aesthetics with his eye, and almost like a big brother to me throughout the process. I have to say this. I have to wonder if there was something in the water of Kitchener-Waterloo, because both the young brothers and myself spent some formational years in Kitchener-Waterloo, and then we all end up at MuchMusic. But Basil is an incredible cameraman. I worked with him on a lot of soul things, and then we traveled together, going to Jamaica, going to New York. I don't think I went to LA with him because there's also a lot of other people. We had a stable of great, talented cameramen who I was fortunate enough to work with over the years. And I want to shout out everybody and anybody who's ever been a part of RapCity. There's a lot of them. Even my famous interns who started out with me. You may know them by the names Big C. Craig Mannix was my first intern. And following him was someone who is known today as Director X, but he was Little X in those days.
I was going to ask you about Director X actually. So give me a little bit because Director X big deal now, but got his start with you.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. I used to see him at shows, and I have to say, for the popularity of RapCity, at one point, RapCity became a weekday show. So Monday to Friday is half an hour. And I was still producing Soul in the City. Like it did become my job. That was all I did. But at one point I was producing 2.5 hours of television a week. And in terms of the pre-production staff, it was just me. And the thing that's so important to remember in my time in those days, we did not have the internet.
Right.
We did not have, we couldn't Google. We like literally, and I thought of this recently too. I had the most serious magazine habit because I had to know what was happening and be on top of the next thing.
Right.
But I never knew I could have expensed those magazines. Like I might own Toronto real estate. If I had known, I could expense what I was buying for my research, right?
Oh, that's
Kind of
funny.
funny.
But famously,
I know.
because we cover it quite a bit, I have so many of your colleagues over here, and there was you had a lot of freedom at 99 Queen Street East, then 299 Queen Street West. A lot of freedom, creative freedom to try different things, but you didn't have a lot of money to spend.
Yeah, I mean, other shows, I saw other shows come that followed us that did get, staffing and stuff. But maybe, I guess, because I could do it, I just kept, being able to manage. And we did have to be creative to make things happen. And the freedom, I mean, there was so much freedom. I mean, to be someone who's hired as a technician and within 5 weeks, but you had to have the skills to pay the bills.
Of
To have
course.
been there within 5 months, and now I'm producing a national television program at 23 years of age, right? That was pretty incredible. But as long as you were ready to do the work, I think that's really what mattered. And there was a great legacy to follow of people who had been doing the new music. They really set a high standard, and that was always what I wanted to strive towards. And I think it's your program where Chuck D spoke about the fact that we curated and presented the music differently. And I think that really came from the roots of the new music and the journalistic way of covering music instead of it wasn't about just about celebrity or scandals. It was really about getting into the artistry, the messaging. And yeah, there was a lot of rock and roll still, but it went deep. We went deep.
100%. And that you're right to credit Toronto Mike for that disclosure from Chuck D. I think Chuck D does a lot of interviews.
Yes.
I don't think he does a lot of interviews about hip hop in Toronto. Like I feel like
Yeah,
that was
because
my
people
role.
don't know.
Right.
Yes, thank you for that because I think it's coming out more, but we were kind of under recognized that we had our own scene and we weren't clones. Like Toronto developed its own sound. a lot of it thanks to the wonderfully creative West Indian community that we have. And of course, the whole culture going back to sound systems in Jamaica that really all connects to the evolution of hip hop culture as well.
And now the legacy begins. Let me pepper you with some questions. And yes, you know where I'm going with that, but we'll get to that in a minute. But let me ask you about, you mentioned the name John Martin, and I never got the pleasure of meeting John Martin, but I've talked to so many people about him, and I get, some people have nothing but great things to say about him, and then there's people like Ziggy Lawrence who had a less than awesome experience of John Martin. But can you tell me about your experience with John Martin, who was running MuchMusic?
I have to say that my interactions with John were very minimal. I think I probably only had one or two meetings with John in my entire career. Like I really was kind of given the keys to the kingdom just to go and do my thing. Like I think it kind of ruined me for life because I never really had this structure where there was somebody overseeing and telling me what to do. I just got to do and I did it. So I'm very grateful for him and his vision and the opportunity to get to have done what I did. I recognize it really was a blessing to have been in the place at the time and just have the ability to pick up and start making television when there was a place for me to contribute.
We've already talked about Michael Williams, but let's just a few more words about Erica M, if you don't mind.
I didn't work that closely with Erica. I worked with her producer, Joni Daniels. So really, although I did sit beside Erica, because you remember our desks were in the environment.
Right.
Michael and I shared a desk in the environment. And because, oh boy, again, back to it was just me. I kind of evolved once I was doing the programs full time to using my voicemail as my assistant because getting work done in an environment and there's somebody doing like a drum setup sound check a foot away from your desk,
Right.
it was crazy. It was good crazy, but it was crazy. So I kind of evolved to doing a lot more work later in the day because if I sat there in the daytime, the phone would ring off the hook and I just couldn't get to doing the work that I needed to do as, almost a one woman production team.
Right.
I mean, of course, there would be editors that I could work with, but as well as a crew when we were packaging the program. But I still had to do all the research, the bookings, the preparing, the editing. It's a lot. It's a lot of work to do. But again, I knew the places where I could get a sleep. I could sleep. The security eventually said, the nurse's station has a cot in it. So I started going down into the bowels of the basement to the nurse's station to
Wow.
catch a little nap when I felt like I needed it.
Love it
So
so
yeah,
much.
but Erica sat beside me, but we didn't have too much interaction other than the early days when I did the post production on her features.
Okay, and you spoke quite eloquently about Basil Young, but how about a couple of minutes about Master T?
Oh, Tony, interestingly, I mentioned my community television background. One of the most, they would call you up to come volunteer. That was how community television worked. And one of the worst assignments to take on, but you want to be eager and help out, right? Was to cover a city council meeting. And they go on and on and on. I remember one meeting, I was in the bus and I didn't know who was inside shooting, doing the camera work. And at the end of the production, I remember opening the door to leave the bus. And who was on the other side of that door? Tony Young. So there was a bit of foreshadowing, us meeting in community television and then later meeting at MuchMusic. So I believe when I first got to Much, Tony was a crew cameraman for MuchMusic. And then that he, as hip hop was, bubbling and coming up, he did the MuchMusic Groove video. If you've ever seen that, you can find it on YouTube. Beautiful production. And he did that with the same cameraman, George McWaters, who did that first New York shoot with me. really talented combination. I think they actually were on the same Much Music crew together because when Much was doing its live links during video flow, there would be two cameramen per crew who set up all the shots. So I believe they worked on the same crew together. So that was the first meeting of Tony. I was there already doing RapCity or Soul in the City and RapCity when Tony started working on his extended mix production. And yeah, great, talented man who he really knew how to, I give him so much respect for knowing how to navigate a system at a time when it wasn't always welcoming to persons of color. And he really knew how to, um, show with all his beautiful talents, his improv, his characters, and then evolve into this very, in-depth intellectual journalist with the kinds of interviews that he did. Yeah, much respect to Tony, and I'm very excited that he's going to be joining us for the AGO program. And he still continues to represent culture with the work that he does today.
Absolutely. Interesting side note. I'm curious. Did you see the documentary 299 Queen Street West?
It's interesting. So I was contacted about being in the documentary, and there was a few things buzzing around that people were asking about. I don't know if you've seen Drop the Needle.
Yes, I have.
I part, yep,
Yep.
I participated in Drop the Needle and did some consulting on that film. I did not get to see 299. I was approached about being in the film. And when I work in production, I work in film. My latest film credit is I was the Jamaican production manager for the Bam Bam Sister Nancy documentary, which is an incredible film by Alison Duke and Ngati of Oya, and everybody has to go see that film. Beautiful, beautiful film. But I was approached and I asked a few questions.
Sure.
I asked a few questions about the documentary and never heard back. And then the film came out.
Well, it
And
depends how you define came out, but yes. It just
right, yeah, exactly. And let me tell you the rest of the story
Oh
because
yeah.
it's very interesting.
Okay.
So there's an article in Variety magazine, and the director of the film is quoted as saying he learned so many things by going through the archives at Bell Media, including finding out that RapCity was the brainchild of Tony Young. And I was like, wait, like, hold on. Like, big stop. So I reached out to the director because I didn't remember that he had contacted me about the film because he ignored me when I asked. I went back with questions about the production and the engagement and how it would go and what the expectations were, blah, blah, blah. So I messaged him, he's like, oh yeah, I asked you if you wanted to be in the film. And I went back and I checked my message and said, yeah, but you didn't get back to me when I asked you questions. So anyway, I said, well, listen, this is incorrect, this information, and it's in Variety magazine. Like this is an entertainment Bible, and it's everywhere. And you have given my credit away to someone else. And he said to me, we were texting back and forth on social media. And he says to me, he goes, oh yeah, I hate when I get misquoted. And that was the end of it. So luckily, at the time, I had a little bit of a publishing insight because this article was being written about my career for Music Works magazine. And the publisher of Music Works helped us track down the writer, and I got a correction made in Variety. But I thought at the time, you know, why couldn't the director, who obviously would have had the contact to the person who interviewed him, dropped an email and got a correction. Like it was very strange. And then I've heard, and of course, since the drama of the samples and the copyright not being handled in a way that the film could be released in a larger way than the premieres they did on that cross Canada tour that they did. I'd love to see it. I'd very much like to see it.
So I have seen it because I was
Mhm.
invited to the Roy Thompson Hall premiere because the director,
Right.
his name's Sean Menard, he's been over here. We've
Yes.
had a chat about everything. But the reason I actually brought it up is because we're talking about Master T, and I'm friendly enough with Master T. He's been over here. I'm a big fan of Master T, and he didn't like. He was asked to be a part of this, and he said no. So
Yes, I know this.
yeah, he said
Yeah.
no. Whereas, for example, I'll just pick on, well, Eric M. is heavily involved, I think, an executive producer title or something of that nature. And then you have, of course, Michael Williams, who's very involved, et cetera, et cetera. But, I've had on this very show Catherine McClenahan. Did you ever cross paths with Catherine McClenahan by any chance?
I didn't, but I have listened. I listened to Erica's podcast with Catherine,
Okay.
and I was following online because, social media wise, I'm connected to
Sure.
many of my old colleagues at City Much Music. So I was seeing all the commentary and I heard about her disappointment because she too was miscredited. And it's kind of a sticky point for me in this day and age when there's so much more access to the media. And I feel that the word documentary gets used so much more lightly as opposed to maybe back in the day where your research and the credibility and the integrity and the having the correct information is so essential to being able to put that moniker documentary on a film. So I felt my heart was broken for Catherine that she was basically erased as being the first female VJ on Much Music.
Yeah, absolutely. You said it there. And I do agree. The best example in recent history is this news that this very deep dive, warts and all documentary series on the extremely talented Prince was being shelved in favor of a quote unquote documentary that the family of Prince was going to be behind. And I think it's safe to assume there'd be no warts in that particular version. And yeah, the word documentary now, it seems like a lot of these documentaries are sort of like celebrities sanctioned PR pieces.
Definitely, definitely. Um, yeah, it's become the new norm in the genre almost. And we're in this world where there's all these platforms that need to be fed with content. So I think there are corners that are cut in terms of integrity in some of these pieces that we see. A lot of propaganda.
A lot of propaganda. Okay, so I realize now that we're at the hour mark, and I promise you I am wrapping up here, but rapid fire here.
Oh gosh.
Any interactions with the visionary that is Moses Znaimer?
I plead the fifth.
Okay, then you can play the fifth on that because that is your right, of course. But then I have a follow up, which is I'm curious for what you thought of the time Moses Znaimer ordered Public Enemy off of Much Music due to anti-Semitism.
People will have to read my book.
Oh no! This is like Nick Kiprios, so it's in the book. It's in the book. Okay.
Sorry, it'll be in my book. Sorry.
Okay. When this book is published, will you come back on to discuss?
Definitely,
Okay.
definitely.
And you do know, Michelle, you get one Zoom. I kind of thought it was a Zoom from Jamaica. You get one. The next one, you got to be in the basement so I can give you your Palma pasta lasagna and your Great Lakes beer and your Ridley Funeral Home measuring tape.
Well, I wanted to invite you to come to the AGO. I don't know if you're available on Saturday. You might want to bring a package with you.
Oh, I don't know. You got to earn that goods. You got to
You
be.
have to earn it.
You have to be in the
I get
basement.
that. I would do that. I would make people earn it too. So,
So
and
sorry. Before
no, I
I
was just going to say,
yeah, please continue.
No, I just wanted to give you your props for what you're doing. I love it. I love that you're documenting all this culture, telling people's stories, and really almost mom and pop support from really good brands. I think that's amazing what you're doing. And how many shows have you done? How many episodes now?
This is 1653, I believe.
Wow,
16.
that's a lot of work.
And I've wanted to have this conversation with you for a very long time. I love rap. I love Canadian rap. I was there for RapCity on MuchMusic, and I just said Michele Geister is somebody I want to speak to. So we're almost done here. We talked about Michie Me. So two more artists I just was curious if you had anything further to say about. One being Maestro Fresh Wes, who I think it's safe to say had the first hit Canadian hip hop song when Let Your Backbone Slide broke. Shout out to Joel Goldberg and his video with Dwight Drummond cameo in there. And then maybe a word or two about Dream Warriors, which DJ Ron Nelson recorded in his basement studio. Yeah, so Maestro and Dream Warriors, please.
All right. So I think it would be great for people to come out to the AGO.
Wait, you're going to be at the
One of
AGO this weekend? What's going on? Okay, just kidding. Yeah, please remind people.
So one of the things that we've done for the presentation is we've collected over 40 testimonials from people who were a part of the scene in all different kinds of ways. So of course, Maestro is in there. And he actually recalls one of our first interactions. I don't want to give it away because it's going to be at the event. And then he stole one of my favorite memories that I had shared with him, and he went and stole it as one of his memories
Oh,
that you'll probably see in the edit this weekend.
which I will try to
But
go to, by the way. I will absolutely do my best. I have like 4 kids. I got to do some balancing here. But I actually want to be at the Art Gallery of Ontario on Saturday from 1 to 4 p.m. for Remembering RapCity, the legacy of Canadian hip-hop television. I want to be there. I think I can be there.
I will put you on the guest list.
Remember, first name Toronto, last name Mike. Okay. So
Got it.
you're it's not that it's in the book, it's that
Dream
it's in the Art Gallery edit video that we can see. So but Dream Warriors, Maestro, all this
Dream
stuff
Warrior.
all this stuff I'm looking for. I have to come out to the Art Gallery on Saturday to drink it in.
I would say so. I mean, I have some personal archives of the Dream Warriors. I was very privileged to do two, I think it was two, maybe three tours with the Dream Warriors in Europe, as well as across all of the UK. And during one of those tours, I did freelance video work for a portion of my time at Much. We were very blessed in the open creativity of the environment. As you know, Joel worked at Much, but he also did music videos. I did a few videos myself. And I did, at the time, it was in fashion to do what they call home videos. So when an artist had music videos, you'd link them together with other content. So I did one of those for the Dream Warriors, following them on tour in Europe. So I'll be showing some of that incredible footage to have been on tour with a Canadian hip hop act who were top 20 in the UK and charting in other places around the world. It was incredible to be going to record stores, and there would be this press scrum like of, I don't know, 30 photographers. It was a very special time. And I was grateful that I could, take up a camera, take my vacation time, take my own camera
Wow.
and go on the road, and then come back and be able to share with the nation what inspirational things were happening for Canadian artists.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's my dream warrior. Sorry. Oh, and I got to go to I also worked on Jules their video. I worked on the My Definition video that Joel shot. I always did a lot of things like getting casting and bringing in the right stylist, stuff like that. And then we also did a pretty interesting video in St. Kitts. Did we go to St. Kitts? Yeah, St. Kitts and Nevis, where for the song Ludi.
Of course.
And very interestingly, sorry, I'm going to rat you out, Joel. The camera for that shoot was FedExed. So we went to St. Kitts for 10 days to do this video. And Joel, maybe his first time doing something outside the country, he shipped the film camera. Well, we were there 7 days before the camera showed up. So we had quite the trip doing the pre-production for a whole week. And then the last bit of the trip, we had to bang out the video for Ludi. But yeah, so many incredible memories and so grateful to have been able to make a contribution, you know?
Any home video of Tom Green and organized rhyme?
I have my Tom Green stories. I do. I have some pretty interesting Tom Green video stories. I did a number of videos again with Tom Green and crew. Yeah, check the OR video. I worked
Which has
on
a
that.
cameo appearance by the Dream Warriors.
Yes, because we went to Jane and Finch. We went to Jane and Finch.
The Food City at Jane and Finch.
Yes, we
Because
did.
I was working at the Food City at Galleria Mall at the time.
Oh, really? Oh, look at that.
There you go.
Also did the check the OR video, or sorry, Love One video as well. I did that video. I did a number of videos with George Vale, fantastic now director, of course, but also incredible cinematographer. So those videos all exist out in the world,
But it's safe to
YouTube.
say the not just the average, but I think 99.9% of the listeners right now only care about the one organized rhyme song. Like, I feel like
Okay.
that's a band, I know, my opinion, that's a band where
Okay.
everybody knows Check the OR, and it's amazing you had a
Yeah.
role in that. People probably listening around can do it in their head right now. They can see the video in that Ottawa Senators hat or jersey, whatever. I don't think anyone listening other than Tom Green himself can name a second organized rhyme song. This is my feeling here in South Etobicoke. Maybe I'm wrong.
Love One is a beautiful video.
Love One.
It's memorable to me. I don't think just
Sure.
because I worked on it, just because it had a vibe and it was a new look for hip hop, I would say. But yeah, maybe.
And I don't mean to
Maybe.
discredit organized
I
rhyme.
have a great story. I have a great Tom Green story though.
Okay.
When we were doing Check the OR, of course, we did a lot of guerrilla shooting in those days. I was working with Roger Larry on that video and Barry Stone. And we went to Jane and Finch. And of course, we don't have permission to be there. Like, we're showing up and trying to, blow off these shots that we
Right.
need. So we're under pressure. Plus, it's winter and it's cold.
Right.
And we're trying to finish. And we're there and we're looking. And I can't find Tom, because of course, that falls down to me to have to wrangle the talent as well. Can't find him anywhere. Like, looking everywhere. Have you seen him? Have you seen him? Guess where I find Tom Green?
No idea.
In a tree. He has climbed a tree.
Yeah, he's
And
bananas.
he's in a tree. He's in a tree while we're looking for him to get these last shots done so we could move, get out of the way before security threw us out of the project that we had invaded with our little crew.
You don't want to
But,
mess with the Food City security. They could be pretty tough, actually.
Yeah, Food City was cool. It was the actual residential area that we didn't have permission to be there. So yeah, we were trying to get out of there pretty quick. But a lot of respect to Tom Green. He actually organized, with RapCity, I was very intentional in wanting to build what I called, MuchMusic was the nation's music station. So I was like, well, we need a Canadian hip hop nation. So I did a segment that was always, I like to think of it as being like early social media, where I would post community information, not concerts, because I was making sure we had, you remember our sponsored music listings on MuchMusic, but there were other things happening culturally. So I made a segment where we would post information about things that were happening, the Canadian Hip Hop Nation. Tom organized for us to go to Ottawa and cover what was happening in the Ottawa scene at the time, of course, including Organized Rhyme and the community radio there and some other groups. And I was fortunate that I got to do that with other groups across the country in those little places, cities that all had their scenes, because that was something that people didn't realize. They thought, oh, it's, just, this is Black music. It's only in certain urban centers or it's only in Toronto. But yeah, there's a scene in Vancouver. There was a scene in Calgary. There's a scene in Edmonton. There was a Winnipeg scene. There was an Ottawa scene. There was a Montreal scene. There was a Halifax scene. And, forgive me for the scenes I'm not remembering, but it was a revolution. And it went from coast to coast, really.
Amazing. So why do you leave MuchMusic?
I would say professional trauma. And I had fallen in love with Jamaica, and my husband is Jamaican. And it was time for a change. I had been at MuchMusic 11 to 12 years. And I had realized that I didn't need to stay in the cold, and it could expand. It was time. My biological clock was ticking. I was ready to start my family. And yeah, so I did have a very prolific career, I would say. And I've been told, just in terms of influencing the Jamaican television landscape as well. So a lot of what had been done at City and Much, the kind of production technique, I took that with me when I moved to Jamaica. I thought I would do music television when I got to Jamaica, but we already had several established music shows. So I ended up kind of doing a pivot and started doing lifestyle television. So I created a show that is on the air to this day. I co-created, called Smile Jamaica. And it's a much beloved morning show. I know exactly how old the show is because my son was born right as we were launching the show, because of course we had production delays with the launch and all kinds of stuff. And then my son decided to come 2 days early, or 2 weeks early from my due date. So literally the show launched as my son was born. So I was taking this born into the studio because I had to be there to direct, right? So I've done a number of, over the years, it's been 30 years in Jamaica doing other projects. The first reality show in Jamaica, building up a company that did Caribbean-wide fashion, lifestyle with homes, architecture and design, attractions. Also had my own television food series. And now I work in community development with an organization called the Source Farm Community Development Institute. And we teach all different types of sustainable living practices. And I do media support for that, in addition to dabbling in other projects.
Well, it sounds like you've done a heck of a lot, Michele, since RapCity, but it's RapCity we're going to be remembering on Saturday, March 22nd. Yeah. So it's called The Legacy of Canadian Hip Hop Television. It's Remembering RapCity, The Legacy of Canadian Hip Hop Television, Saturday, March 22nd, 1 to 4 at the Art Gallery of Ontario. I'm almost certain I will be there. But thanks so much for this time today and just talking about RapCity and more. And I'm hoping you'll return to the program at some point here in the basement in South Etobicoke. I would love that.
Etobicoke has a very sweet spot for me. I would, in those days at Much, I would always drive out to Mimico by the park there and chill, just to get a break from the city and look back. So I love Etobicoke. So I'll try my best to make that happen when I'm back next time.
Thanks, Michele.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
And that brings us to the end of our 1653rd show. Go to torontomike.com, for all your Toronto mic needs. Much love to all who made this possible. That's Great Lakes Brewery. They make delicious craft beer. Palma Pasta. They make delicious Italian food. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Building Toronto Skyline, a great podcast from Nick Iones. And Ridley Funeral Home. Brad Jones makes Life's Undertaking, a podcast you should subscribe to right now. See you all Thursday when my guest is Patrick Pentland from Sloan.